Delcy acted in Venezuela during the earthquake, just like Sánchez did in Valencia during the flood. Delcy didn't send the rescuers in the first hours. No way. It took a long time, up to 72 hours, that is 3 days, to send the necessary personnel and be able to help save lives. Why 3 days? Today we'll tell you about it here.
There are reports from relatives or neighbors of buildings who knew there were signs of life, but there was simply no action taken because there was suspicion. Or did they think, based on the security mobilization around those buildings, that there were hidden caches there? And obviously, they didn't want that money to be found because it was the main evidence, right? At least publicly, and this has been very unfortunate because, in fact, I think it has happened. Many people died because the regime prevented them from being rescued in order to preserve that evidence from those stashes that, by the way, could still be under the rubble.
He knows that no one becomes a general in the civil guard in the armed forces or a commissioner in the police if they haven't gone through a series of filters before, and you know what I mean, which filters I'm referring to. In other words, that they're compliant to the political power of the moment. I don't care if it's the PSOE or the PP, meaning they'll go along with anything.
We all have to recover this Spain together, so let's not let anxiety get the best of us. We'll wait until they give us a ballot box because we're not like the socialists. Up to 5 heads of state and government in Spain were killed by the Republicans and members of the Socialist Party. Not a single one was killed by the right, none. Well, there are tributes to La Pasionaria, yes, the one who told Calvo Sotelo, "You have spoken for the last time today." And then some socialists shot him and left him in a ditch. This is Spain, the Spain of confrontation. Who mentions Francoism here? The far left, the left, and Pinochet. Sánchez and his people try to feed off that pain. You have to be idiots, bad people, to dig into that pain that divided Spaniards. And we never want it to happen again. But they are creating a breeding ground to pit Spaniards against each other. Let's not allow it.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillo.
My insurance sponsors the editorial of Castillon Confidential.
Bienvenidos. Welcome, Confidential, strength, honor, and let's go forward to defend this bastion of freedom. Thank you for supporting this program, for liking it, and for sharing it. Take whichever part you want, share it wherever you like. You are free to do so, and we're happy to help spread the truth we tell here every day. It's amazing what's happening around us, and we don't even realize it. Here, we tell you a good part of it every day. Look, Delcy Rodriguez and Pedro Sánchez are becoming more and more alike every day. Both of them are finished. Both of them expect to be replaced soon. Both of them know that either the dock or jail awaits them. And both of them don't want to give up power and are clinging tooth and nail to a place they never should have been. Because they neither earned it nor were voted in for it. Neither of them, neither Delcy nor Sánchez, were democratically elected, but rather by shady criminal organizations, by mafias that use blackmail, bribery, and extortion as their usual methods to gain power and to stay in it. Delcy acted in Venezuela during the earthquake, just like Sánchez did in Valencia during the flood. Delcy didn't send the rescuers in the first hours, not at all. It took a long time, as long as 72 hours, 3 days, to send the necessary personnel and help save lives. Why 3 days? We'll tell you about it today. But did Sánchez act the same way? During the Valencia flood, with the help of Marlaska and Margarita Robles, they faithfully obeyed their lady, their Sánchez, and did not help the people of Valencia for 3 days and 3 nights, during which no one came to help them, nor to bring them water, nor to restore power to a street, nor to get them out with water up to their necks. How many drowned during those 3 days? How many suffered a heart attack with an illness and didn't get any help? Well, the same number, probably more, because the earthquake in Venezuela is on a larger scale. In the case of Valencia, he did it purely for electoral strategy. Let the PP stew in its own juices, and then they'll pay for it at the polls and will govern the Valencian community. There are people capable of thinking like that. The worst part is that they're in the Moncloa Palace. In the case of Delcy Rodriguez, it was about money, gold bars, and a lot of money. In several apartments in La Guaira, a strategically located place with a port and an international airport nearby. In hundreds of apartments, not just dozens, they set up what they call caletas, which are secret houses, safe houses for Chavismo. They stored the profits from drugs in them. When kilos, tons of cocaine were sold in the United States or other countries, even Europe, the proceeds arrived in containers at the port of La Guaira. Hundreds of millions of dollars in $100 bills. And those millions were strategically placed in some apartments in the area that is now destroyed. Not just money, but also gold bars. In fact, today we'll tell you about people who were tortured and extorted by the regime. When everything collapsed, when the earthquake happened, Delcy's government's priority was to make sure they weren't exposed and that no one found the gold, the money, or the kidnapped people. That's why they protected exactly those dozens, some say hundreds of houses where those secret hideouts were located and which they had perfectly identified. And the priority wasn't to save lives, it was to recover what they had obtained with the cartel of the Suns. That's why they went 3 days without helping their own people. And for 3 days the neighbors were left alone, and only when they were allowed to, because there were entire buildings they couldn't enter. Today we're going to tell you all about it in detail, and we have a guest who's already waiting. And something else from Venezuela. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chavista government has gone paranoid. They are obsessed and afraid that Maria Corina Machado might show up at the ruins of La Guaira or anywhere else in Venezuela to support the earthquake victims. That's going to happen according to what Maria Corina has said. She already tried to get there, as you know, and one way or another, even the United States prevented her from being in that place. What's happening in Venezuela? And beyond whether Maria Corina visits or not, they keep being found. It's true, stash houses, what in Europe we'd call safe houses, with gold, with money, but also with people. There is talk of torture rooms. The person who has that information is an investigative journalist with many years of experience, Venezuelan, now exiled in Miami. My dear friend, Casto Cando, how are you?
Very well, Albert. Thank you for the invitation to your prestigious program.
It's a pleasure to be with you. We learn a lot from you every day. Is it true that the Chavista government has become paranoid out of fear that Maria Corina Machado might show up?
Absolutely. There's even an operation in different border areas in Venezuela. For example, yesterday, sources informed me that in this area, very close to the islands of Aruba, and it's the peninsula, the Venezuelan peninsula, Paraguaná, there are SEBIN units, which is the intelligence agency of the regime. The security forces, the DGCIM, are constantly monitoring because they fear that there might be an entry through this area, which, by the way, was the same one that Maria Corina used to leave the country last December to go to Norway to receive the Nobel Prize. So there is a reason for them to be concerned, because I believe that Maria Corina's presence would be quite destabilizing for the regime.
That's why so many of us are hoping for it. Do you think it's going to happen?
Well, Maria Corina is no longer in the United States. She has kept some distance. She's in Panama at the moment, as far as we know. and apparently she had made the decision. But she is reluctant to make a decision that would mean a very open confrontation, or let's say a point of no return with the United States. She obviously understands that any action she takes in Venezuela in some way has to have the support of the United States, and this is a dilemma that is not easy for her to resolve.
No doubt. Well, what's happening in La Guaira? We were informed that they found different units, apartments, safe houses, as we would call them here, hideouts in Venezuela, with money, with gold, but I'm told also with people. You are telling me on your channel, Castillon Confidencial, that there are even places where people have been tortured and that these have been located in La Guaira and that there is a report sent to the Pentagon with witnesses of this. Is that so?
Yes, completely. Before talking about this subject, there is a report made by a former chief of the National Police in Venezuela, the Metropolitan Police, who is exiled here in Miami. His name is Luis Camacho Cairuz. He described how a group of people who were kidnapped and kept, let's say, right, in one of these housing complexes that collapsed, which had been built, by the way, by the regime. Interestingly, the name of this development was Hugo Chavez. There in one of those apartments, the police officer, the chief of police, says there were apartments used to house people who had been kidnapped for extortion purposes by the security agencies themselves. And he says that one of these people managed to survive, or maybe a significant group. After the apartment where they were collapsed, the building ended up killing the kidnappers, a group of people from Sebin. And these people managed to get out, among other things, because they were able to dig through these styrofoam walls with which the buildings had been constructed. And they managed to get out after many hours of trying, and about 15 people were saved according to that account, and it's something we've confirmed. There are sources in Washington right now who are participating in this team that constantly monitors the situation in Venezuela, that not only had they kidnapped people, but there were also torture houses, and as is well known in Venezuela, there are torture houses, private homes not listed in any official records. They're not prisons, they're hidden places that the regime uses to keep people, whether it's because they're opposition members or simply because they're against the regime. And this has been included in this report. I spoke with the person who was part of that investigation, which was, I repeat, sent to the Pentagon. Has there been an operation in La Guaira for these completely illegal acts, which, by the way, have previously been reported to international organizations such as the United Nations, for example, and they include them in their reports? What about the International Criminal Court?
It's incredible because you're talking about Casto, about buildings with floors, and in some of them they could hide, for example, $100 million. I'm not exaggerating, right?
Look, the drug business is a very profitable business, and it makes a lot of sense. These houses, let's say for safekeeping, what they call caletas in Venezuela, in English would be stash houses, operate in that area where the port and the airport, the most important airport in Venezuela, are concentrated. Much of this investigation, much of this, let's say, this money comes through shipments that come from the United States. There is, in fact, an investigation that was started by the DEA. I had the opportunity to meet the person from the DEA, the people from the DEA who were in charge of this operation, of this investigation, at the port of Jacksonville, and I imagine that they also did it at other ports where these containers with hidden money were shipped from. Let's say, and there are a number of ways they do it, for example, and this is part of another thing. They acquire industrial equipment, large pipes, for example, for the oil industry, and inside the pipes, which are very large tubes, they put the amount of money that is then sent to Venezuela. And when it arrives at the ports, obviously there's an operation to take that money out, store it, and take it to these places. Very close, by the way, to the port in the city of La Guaira, which was devastated by the earthquake. And it's been money that has been, let's say, protected by allies of the regime who lived in that area. That's why when this building collapsed, when many of these buildings really, a lot of money was left in the rubble. And that's the reason, one of the main reasons why the regime hasn't wanted, particularly Diosdado Cabello, hasn't wanted these things to happen. There are much more specific reports now of houses that have been protected by up to 100 soldiers or police officers. Obviously, with the goal of protecting that huge fortune, which is, by the way, the result of illegal activities. Something that, by the way, a major newspaper in the United States, the Wall Street Journal, is reporting or has just reported the same information.
It's hard to understand that if they're running the country, if Delcy Rodriguez, Diosdado, but under the supervision of the United States, haven't shut down these places, because I understand they knew about them, right? Did the United States know this information or not?
Look, the United States knows absolutely everything that's going on. Not only the federal investigative agencies, which have been investigating this situation for years. For example, there's an investigation from 2018. I met at least one of the witnesses out of the 5 or 6 witnesses who got together to document this investigation. It has to do with a cartel within the Los Soles cartel, which was called the PDVSA cartel. They used oil industry infrastructure to traffic, even to produce or process coca-based paste and so on. And within this organization, there were these houses or stash sites, as they're called in Venezuela. And this has been documented since 2018. There are even locations, all locations through Google where these houses could be. Obviously, this is information from 2018. This must have been changed, but this is part of the various investigations that exist in the United States, particularly here in Miami, against or that implicates Delcy Rodriguez and other operators of the regime. So it's not a new issue. But the other important thing to understand is that the United States, which now has a contingent of 2,000 or more agents, operators, soldiers, officers in Venezuela, also includes, of course, within any contingent, officials or indeed military intelligence targets, right? Which is the famous DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency, the agency in charge of collecting all the information. Because in the midst of all this whole relationship, which is perceived as very cordial, the United States does not lose sight of its objective. It is constantly gathering vital information that can be used in the future for future operations.
So there was money, gold bars too, Castro.
Look, there is testimony from several Chilean rescuers, above all, and this is an issue that has also been reported, particularly to the State Department. There is testimony from one of these Chilean rescuers who got in touch with a diplomat. The diplomat sent it, and a communication was established with the State Department in the United States, in Washington, where he says that not only were they constantly harassed by the regime's envoys, but they were also monitored with drones to know what they were doing. But he says he was able to identify or discover in the middle of those debris removal operations and searching for survivors, he saw significant amounts of a yellow metal that he assumes is gold. And this is one of the reasons why he says they were being harassed by the regime. The regime obviously didn't want them to dig too deep because there was something there. This is a report that, I repeat, has been made to the State Department. I know the people involved. I have this person's testimony. The person doesn't want to speak publicly, obviously because of the implications that could have, but they did communicate. They made the report through an important diplomat to the State Department authorities, at least.
What you're saying is serious, because it's true that any drug cartel acts like that, but we're saying that the order was given and it had to be given. Delcy Rodriguez, Diosdado Cabello, and Jorge Rodriguez. The order was given for the rescuers to block those who were going to rescue so they wouldn't find the drug lord's treasure. That is, there are people who died because of this delay, right?
Yes, absolutely. There are reports that not drug lords, but citizens who are now in jail, they knew there were signs of life, that there was simply no action taken because it was suspected, or that's what they thought. According to the security mobilization around those buildings were their stashes there, and obviously they didn't want that money to be found because it was the key piece of evidence, right? At least publicly, and this has been very unfortunate because I really think that it has happened. Many people died because the regime prevented them from being rescued in order to preserve that evidence from those stashes that, by the way, could still be under the rubble.
We've received a message from Venezuela, and they tell us that they heard voices of people calling for help, but they were there for their own reasons. They weren't looking to save them. They were collecting material, merchandise from the place that they couldn't identify it, and then they left. The scene is shocking. The Venezuelan people are aware that they are the final target, and that in the end, the worst thing this regime has done after 27 years is to let people die in exchange for continuing to get rich.
I believe this has caused a great commotion, a great indignation throughout the whole country. This is even starting to be reflected in some of the surveys that have been conducted recently. There's an important one that was just published by Bloomberg together with this organization called Atlas Intel, which is a polling company, and they are revealing the extraordinary rejection that exists not only against Delcy Rodriguez in particular, but also against the institution of the armed forces, which in theory should have taken charge of the rescue, let's say. And it has become very clear that during the first 72 hours, and this is something that even rescue groups have reported, during the first 72 hours, there was no decisive action on the part of the regime. One wonders why, right? What were they trying to gain during that critical period? By the way, to save lives, there's a rescuer who just arrived in Miami from the team of firefighters who went there, who said that if they had arrived earlier, they would have saved people. They would have saved many more lives than they managed to save, because obviously time is crucial in this kind of disaster.
That's incredible what you're telling me, Castro. I imagine if it's shocking for Spain, how must it be for a Venezuelan journalist like you? Hey, the question we've been asking ourselves for several years, especially since January 3rd, when will Delcy, Diosdado, and the gang leave or be imprisoned? Look, Banda.
I think that from the moment the decision was made to capture Maduro, the United States prioritized the issue of stability. They didn't want to repeat the mistake they made in Iraq in 2003 of, let's say, decapitating the regime. In that case, it was Saddam Hussein. And they have decided that part of this stabilization process has to be built with the help of those who are there now, those who have de facto power, let's say, right? Obviously, there is no long-term or even medium-term scenario in which these people are going to continue, let's say, forever clinging to power. I think there is, but as long as they're there, as long as these people guarantee a certain level of stability, I mean, as long as they prevent chaos, even within the Chavista ranks themselves, they're going to be viewed positively. The United States, for now, is weighing that, and we have to remember that there's a plan. I mean, the United States has been planning this. It has the three-phase strategy that we all know about, but it's important to know, Albert, should we say the planners? And I'm talking about the people at the Pentagon who are the planners of the military side, which is a very important component, but also the people from the National Security Council who are the direct advisors who talk to Trump. They are constantly developing a kind of state-of-the-art artificial intelligence model. There is one, as you know, well, there is an agreement that was established. Even the Pentagon is partnering with several of these artificial intelligence companies like Anthropic, for example, which is one of the most advanced systems. What's more, it is believed that the design model for capturing Maduro was made with the help of Anthropic. And this entire deployment of 150 planes was carried out based on those scenario models. And I think that the United States is gauging this step by step, let's say, developing all these scenarios in which, for now, the participation of the regime in this process is important, versus a model, let's say, a scenario in which the opposition takes control, right? And this is a controversial issue and it's difficult because the United States, just as it doesn't trust the regime, doesn't fully trust the opposition either. And what they don't want is for everything they've managed to achieve to fall apart. Because of a series of internal disagreements, because of divisions within the opposition, because of the ability or inability to have leadership over the power centers like the armed forces. For example, what's going to happen if Maria Maricorina comes to power? Will the military obey her? What's going to happen with the security services? SEBIN, DGCIN, UOT, which is an agency of the National Police in Venezuela. They're like the special forces that are loyal to Diosdado Cabello. So removing Diosdado Cabello would create a vacuum that would have to be filled, right? I get the sense that the United States can't fill that vacuum right now. Let's say a leadership that prevents all these forces, which are basically criminal at their core, from running wild or breaking loose or starting to act on their own. It's a pretty complex scenario.
It's curious how times change, Castro. Now it's artificial intelligence that decides when things need to be done and when not. And the last question here, we are very hopeful that the U.S. justice system, where you are, will arrest Rodriguez and compel him to testify. Zapatero, beyond the legal cases he has in Spain, and they assure us that this will happen with Zapatero and with others. What information do you have?
Yes, I think the United States has made it very clear, and I have also confirmed it with some sources here at the Miami prosecutor's office. The case of Zapatero was fueled, or rather, the United States contributed clear, key, decisive information about these operations of Zapatero. Zapatero has many enemies, also obviously in the United States. He was an operative who worked very closely with the Biden administration and with the Obama administration, but especially with Biden's. And there's a feeling, an impression that Zapatero is part of Donald Trump's enemies in the world. And this is, let's say, a condemnation. This means that the United States has access to a lot of information because many of the cases Zapatero was connected to are also connected to cases that the United States is pursuing. Among them, this case that the United States has denied but knows exists against Delcy and Jorge Rodriguez in particular. But there are many others who are heavily involved, and I think this is a key point. Albert, at this point, there's no turning back, right? I mean, you can't unsee or take back what's already been accomplished. That's there, right? And once the American justice system gets involved, let's say in that process, it's a machine that's very hard to stop.
And we're glad it doesn't. Please, do we trust the justice system in the United States more than our own here in Spain? It's sad, but that's how it is. Casto Ocando, I follow you on your channel. Thank you so much for this information and always at your service. Big hug, Albert.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be on your show. Best regards.
Thank you very much.
The Miss Seguros app has sponsored the editorial of Castillon Confidential. Download Miss Seguros, the easiest and fastest way to manage all your insurance in one place.
When you ride an electric scooter, the last thing you want is to be carrying papers. Your insurance always at hand, digital, organized, and ready when you need it.
Thank you for watching. Greetings.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon.
Welcome to the world of Vichy Catalan, where authenticity and health go hand in hand. Here, we know how to enjoy ourselves and also how to take care of ourselves. A place to turn every moment into something unique and savor it intensely. We're waiting for you at the House of Sparkling Water, Vichy Catalan.
Gentlemen, get ready because Sánchez is involved in everything and has organized a clothing line. Yes, you heard that right, that we all pay for with public money. A clothing line is being funded. The clothing line is called, it's street fashion, they say, and it's called Democracia without the E. Well, take a look at the campaign, please. They're there in Congress. They're regular influencers from La Revuelta and from the shows on Channel 1, you know. T-shirts, sweatshirts, pants, all with a very urban style. We're waiting. Well, it says that this clothing line was created to mark the 50th anniversary of what they call a free Spain. With Sánchez, I don't know what we're celebrating, but supposedly they're still remembering Franco's death. How much did it cost us, right? They're thinking, nothing. 15 million euros. 15 million euros. There are no budgets, there's no money for ALS patients, for some medications, much less for home care for people with problems. But for a clothing line, there are 15 million euros of public money. Mr. Carlos Marcos, how are you?
Good morning, Don Alberto.
Very well. Would you wear those clothes or not?
Well, I don't know, because I know that Amancio Ortega is very concerned about this initiative from Pedro Sánchez, and I, as a good Galician, am an admirer of Amancio Ortega. But I would point out, Albert, beyond the anecdote, the shameless nerve that the president of the Spanish government has. I mean, with everything that's going on, a guy who takes a month and a half of vacation to go to a house that we all pay for to spend the summer, and now tries to distract people with this nonsense about this clothing brand that spells imminent failure for him, but it's also made worse by the World Cup, because Pedro Sánchez right now wants us to pay more attention to the ball than to the mess. I'm really glad that Spain beat Portugal and that we're going to the quarterfinals, and I hope we become world champions. But I do ask people not to be confused, not to be deceived, because the reality we're living in Spain is a real disaster. It borders on desperation because of the helplessness we Spaniards feel at not being able to do anything at all in the face of the hijacking of our democracy, because it is absolutely hijacked. And if there was any doubt left, the other day's vote in Parliament calling on President Sánchez to face a confidence vote, whose response was to laugh at all the representatives of the Spanish people in the Congress of Deputies. And to applaud, what a shameless person. We're saying you lack both a social majority, as shown by the polls, and a parliamentary majority, as demonstrated by the recent vote. You, acting like a true autocrat, refuse to move just because you don't want to. And you despise the will of the people, you despise democracy, you despise us Spaniards. What the hell are you laughing at? Shameless.
Yes, but you're laughing. Well, just to be clear, this trend is not going to be sold in stores. It's going to be given away in social media raffles. It's not being done as a business. It's being done as propaganda. And in the end, you all are the ones paying for it. When you go to pay taxes, remember that you're paying for the sweatshirt, the influencer. Well, 15 million strange things happen in this country, for example, and we talked about it here months ago. The City Council of Blanes took 10 million of public money. What do you think about that, Carlos? 10 million, and put it in an account in Andorra because they say it gives them more profit. I'm just saying, why not put it in Dubai or buy PDVSA bonds in Venezuela, right? Or, I don't know, let's see, Gerard Ortega, candidate for mayor of Blanes. How are you, my friend?
Very well. Thank you very much for the invitation, Alberto.
Hey, I'm just saying it seems unbelievable. What have they done? Are they following Jordi Pujol's path or what? It's incredible.
Yes, well, these 10 million euros are still in Andorra. And, well, now what a coincidence that after our live broadcast, right? Our interview that we did a couple of months ago, what a coincidence that now I'm hearing rumors that the house for which the mortgage was requested is now up for sale. It's quite a coincidence.
The councilman who put the house up for sale?
Jordi Calvet.
Who is he?
The one who was the finance councillor of Blanes and the one who works at Antbank, which is where these connections come together, right? Where they managed to transfer the city council's money, everyone's money, under very good conditions, right? To an account in Andorra. Yes.
Gerard, which party is this councillor who made that decision from?
Well, look, this councillor is from the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party, from the PSC in Catalonia.
Yeah, and how is it that he's a councillor in Blanes and works at a bank in Andorra? It's complicated. It's not that close. Well,
now he's no longer a councillor, okay? As we mentioned a couple of months ago, he resigned in August 2025, okay? Just to give a bit of context, right? For the viewers, Blanes is a town in Girona on the Costa Brava here in Catalonia, okay? Here, the PSC governs with Junts, with Puigdemont's party, okay, in coalition. And I repeat, until August 2025, there was this councillor, Jordi Calvet, okay? He was the one pulling the strings. Through the Blaine City Council, he had more influence than the mayor, okay? From that point, in November, that's when it happens, okay? This deposit, this transfer of 10 million from the municipal treasury to the bank account of Ban in Andorra, okay? So what I'm wondering here is, did this man just take advantage of the Blaine City Council however he wanted, okay, to bring in his festivals and whatever else he had going on here in Blaine's? And then, once he saw that this was already a lost cause, that he couldn't get anything else out of Blaine's, he left, then acted as an intermediary for these 10 million, and on top of that, he always comes out winning. And this is, well, I think it's just one more example of the party that governs us in Spain, the PSOE. This is just one more example.
Can you imagine, Carlos, do you think it's normal for Spanish public money to be put into an Andorran account to generate profits? Is this, to begin with, legitimate?
I doubt it. I doubt it, because if a citizen takes their money to Andorra and opens an account there, it's capital flight unless they declare it to the Ministry of Finance and justify the funds. But in this case, since it's public money, they can't use it for a private activity that brings benefits, in this case to an individual. I mean, it's the height of absurdity. But I imagine that once this information is known, both the tax agency and maybe a court on duty will get involved. Where someone files a complaint, they'll open an investigation, because it's not just abnormal or unreasonable, it's actually illegal. It's actually illegal.
No, it doesn't seem like it. Is there any open court case about this, Gerard?
No, I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware because, after all, the height of absurdity is that the mayor said everything was legal, that he simply, well, different proposals from different banks were presented, and he saw that Ant Bank was the one offering the best conditions, what a coincidence, and that he put it in Ant Bank, basically.
It's incredible. I say they're following Puyol's path, but now they don't even hide it. Now they just tell it, they explain it. Will things like that happen in this country? By the way, you're a waiter and proud of it, right?
That's right, that's right.
Why do they call you the Catalan Milei? Well,
I feel a strong affinity with Javier Milei's ideas and what he represents. And it's true that my speech, which supports cutting public spending and tightening up the accounts, in this case, at the municipal level, well, this comparison has emerged, okay, allowing for the differences with Javier Milei, with President Javier Milei. It's also true that at some point, well, I have some contact through social media with a deputy from La Libertad Avanza. We've been talking, and as a result, it's true that many people in La Libertad Avanza fortunately know me, and, well, this comparison has come about.
if things don't go well in Blaine's, you can go to Buenos Aires, which is beautiful, and they'll welcome you with open arms there. The truth is that the use of public spaces and public money in Spain is very different from that of any other European country. It's normal, for example, for a family member to live in the Moncloa Palace for some time. Mariano Rajoy's father lived there because he was sick, he was very old. Or Sonsoles Espinosa's parents lived there, Zapatero's in-laws, because the ground floor where the Prime Minister lives has an upper floor with several rooms. And it's like a hotel where you can invite whoever you want for a few days. What isn't normal is that someone who claims to be paying taxes in Portugal is living there, and he's still hiding in La Moncloa. David Sánchez Pérez Castejón, as Alejandro reports in Trambas Aguas, has been living upstairs in Moncloa since June 23rd, playing a grand piano that was left there. Sonsoles Espinosa works for Patrimonio. She used to sing in a choir. You know, David does these things. Play it, Gile. Let's suffer a little. It's a masterpiece by David Sánchez. I can tell you like it. I see it on your face, Carlos.
Damn, you play this noise for me this early? I feel like you want to annoy me again, and we always start off wrong.
No, it's not noise, it's music. The thing is, you don't understand contemporary music.
Yeah, that's probably it. That's what it is.
Doing that. He plays the piano on the second floor. Now I'm starting to understand why Sánchez looks worse and worse and his health is declining. He's on the ground floor putting up with this, and he's there hiding, barely coming out, playing the piano and enjoying whatever time he has left in freedom, because at any moment it will become known. They said that this week the sentence against him will come out and he could face years in prison. Either him or Begoña or him, or maybe both, or maybe neither. What do you think? Which of the two would go to prison first, Carlos?
I think neither of them will go to prison. I think there will be light sentences. In Begoña's case, a light sentence, but she will be convicted, I'm convinced, just not sent to prison. And in David's case, he probably won't go to prison either, because what interests me is knowing the sentence they give to Gallardo, who was the president of the provincial council. And he did everything possible to cheat so that this man could pass that test on terms that were totally unfair to the other candidates, which is what happened, and it was proven in the oral hearing. Therefore, I doubt it, although you know that I blindly believe in justice, no matter what happens and no matter who gets convicted. But in this case, I'm afraid that the efforts the Prime Minister's office is making might pay off.
We'll see what happens, but remember, officially and for tax purposes, he's living in Portugal. And it was a scandal that the tax agency didn't open a case. In fact, they did, and they said there was nothing unusual. You can get paid by the provincial council and apparently live in Portugal in a place where he didn't actually live and was hiding at the Prime Minister's residence. It's all like something out of a Netflix series about politics and about corruption, don't you think?
But notice that in both cases, the prosecution is asking for acquittal, both for Begoña and for Sánchez's brother. The prosecution, who does it depend on? Well, Sánchez is taking that to the absolute limit. And it's not impossible, and there are legal precedents in this regard, but the fact that the prosecution is asking for full acquittal at least guarantees a lighter sentence. That's why I'm telling you that I expect a very light sentence for Begoña. It could even end up being just a fine, something like that. And as for David, I think they're going to try to clear him as long as Gallardo takes the blame for Sánchez's brother's whim. But I think we'll have news about this matter this week.
It seems so. Well, gentlemen, we're getting a lot of information about Venezuela. We'll get back to the domestic corruption later. But to me, miracles like the one you're about to see are incredible. After 11 days, a mother with 3 children alive, feeding them with breast milk for 11 days, have come out from under the rubble. Or this child you see in the photograph 12 days later. It's truly impressive what human nature can do. Castro has already told us that there was no help there for 3 days either, just like there wasn't during the Valencia flood. In Valencia, because of Sánchez's electoral calculations, he didn't care if people died or drowned there because they had money and gold hidden, and money came first, people came later. In the end, it seems that Chavismo and Sanchismo are similar, right, Carlos?
Well, we've talked about that here many times. All autocrats have a common denominator. And in the case of Sánchez, it's extremely dangerous because he's an apprentice autocrat. So he doesn't even know the limits, not even of an autocracy. And therefore, Sánchez is acting like a perfect dictator. He does exactly whatever he wants and doesn't accept any kind of oversight. Neither parliamentary nor social nor anything. That is, he absolutely despises any of the checks a democracy puts in place, precisely to prevent a ruler from acting at their own will, even above the law. And Sánchez is doing it, and he does it so naturally. That is, with a coldness typical of a Sicilian mafia boss. Because you have to be very cold-blooded to know the suffering people are going through out there. Those families who can't fill their fridge. Those families who can't make it to the end of the month. Families feeling forced to send their children away in search of a better life elsewhere. Meanwhile, this guy is trying to fill the Spanish electoral register with illegal immigrants. He doesn't care where they come from or what they've done. Let me remind you that having a criminal record is no longer a requirement that's taken into account when granting nationalities. Therefore, the situation is, in my view, unsustainable from a democratic standpoint and from the standpoint of ordinary common sense. It's not acceptable. What's the reality? That Pedro Sánchez is still there, that he's not going anywhere. Because he's playing a card that's a huge trap. It deeply damages the democratic structure of Spain, which consists of knowing that his partners are pro-ETA murderers from Bildu, or his separatist partners from Esquerra Republicana, Catalan coup plotters, or his partners from Junts, or his partners from the Galician nationalist bloc. They prefer Sanchez's corruption to continue rather than call for elections, because they've said it clearly. They don't care what the will of the Spanish people expressed at the polls is. They don't want the right to govern in Spain. And in response to that, out come the banners from 1936, right? Do you remember, they shall not pass? And they did pass. And here, whatever has to happen will happen. But the Spanish people need a change. We need to revitalize our democracy because they're stealing it from us. They have demonized the constitutional order of 1978, which gave birth to the constitution that has given Spain the longest period of peace in our entire history. They want to destroy that because they need the streets to be burning. And I guarantee you that starting in September, we will see the streets burning, fueled by these irresponsible people who remain in La Moncloa. No matter what happens, they have no feelings, they have no empathy, and they don't want to recognize the value of a democracy that they themselves have hijacked.
What you're saying is incredible. And on top of that, they take us for fools. It's something this government has done since it came to power. They think we're not capable, that we can be easily manipulated. Now, the trend is to spread fake polls through La Vanguardia, which is a pro-Sánchez outlet from the audio group El País, La Sexta, and all the other channels, La Uno, of course, and to tell lies. The latest one has been that Spain doesn't understand. You don't understand how they took away Begoña's passport and how she couldn't go to the NATO summit. Listen to Bolaños, the most servile minister.
The legal community and the vast majority of Spanish society naturally believe that Begoña Gómez has zero risk of evading justice. Zero risk because she is surrounded at all times by national police officers. Neither the United Kingdom nor Turkey are part of the European area of security, freedom and justice, no. Although with both countries we have extraordinary judicial and police cooperation, thank you.
Has anyone explained to this man that what Spanish society wants is for this woman to go to prison? That never before has a president's wife done what she did and nobody understands it. Why do they take us for fools, Carlos?
No, I think in this case they're not taking us for fools. That's why they're fighting to prevent Begoña from being judged by a jury. Because among the people, the anger and outrage are enormous, and it's going to be very hard for a people's court not to understand the accusations against Begoña and to convict her. That's why they want to avoid it. This man, who is an absolute accomplice in the entire criminal scheme set up by Pedro Sánchez, with their dirty tricks, with the laws, with this whole operation they've set up, they want to avoid that. Because for Pedro Sánchez, not even Begoña being convicted will be a red line. And for his partners, it won't be either. The cynics in the PNV are now hiding behind the line that if there were a ruling, do you take them for idiots? A Supreme Court ruling can take 3, 4, 5 years, or one from the National Court can take 10 years. Don't come to me with that nonsense. But of course, the PNV is constantly holding out their hand, and Sánchez does nothing but give them concessions, new responsibilities. He's giving them control over things that were unthinkable. But if he's willing to give Catalonia 100% of the income tax collection, he's breaking the cohesion that a nation like Spain requires, which is what gives meaning to our nation. A history, a tradition, a present, and above all, a project for the future. They're blowing it up. They want to make it explode. We saw yesterday or the day before in Pamplona how the people of Navarre had to assert that Navarre is Navarre, that it is not Euskal Herria. Well, so this is it. Or we have to put up with the president of the Basque Autonomous Community, which is what it is, an autonomous community. Ashamed of the Spanish national team, he says he doesn't care. Or these Galician nationalist bloc members who claim they only care about the World Cup if the Galician team plays. All of you can go to hell, but they're the ones breaking up Spain and only us. You used to say only the people save the people. Only the Spanish people can save Spain. For that, we need an election. We need to be patient and expect some difficulties. We'll be distracted for a month by the Spanish national team, hopefully reaching and maybe winning the World Cup. But let that in no way make us forget the suffering that Pedro Sánchez and the criminal gang accompanying him in the Moncloa are causing the Spanish people.
Speaking of the World Cup, I want you to listen to Josefa. She's tired of turning on Spanish television channel 2 and hearing football commentary in Catalan as well. Dear Albert, I'm fed up with football.
Dear Albert, I'm absolutely fed up with football being broadcast in Catalan on the second channel. Today, since Spain is playing against Portugal, they're also showing it on the first channel. But what the heck are they doing on the second channel? Well, it's just that all week the broadcasts are in Catalan, but don't they have, I don't know, 7, 8, I don't know how many Catalan TV channels, and also on the second channel. And we have to put up with this.
What do you think? How do you understand it? And on the other hand, Josefa, one of the people who put programs in Catalan on Channel 2 is Iniesta. I mean, Andres Iniesta, who I don't think is short on money, wanted to get into the television production business and got a piece of the action there. And they've given him a bunch of little shows so he can make hundreds of thousands of euros with a hand-picked contract. Just like Buenafuente, just like Miki Moto, all those in the same circle. But Iniesta too. Do you get what's going on with Iniesta, Carlos?
Well, and Iniesta has his eye on the money, and he's going to make money, of course, because all these production companies are overloaded with public money, which is why they later sell the programs to public television for a fortune. There's Broncano, for example, who does a lousy, absolutely boring show, among other things, but the guy is pocketing 25,000 euros per episode. But the production company also belongs to him. There's a whole business set up. And when it comes to the native languages, well, they're calling it a normalization process. The concept of a normalization process is a concept that has its roots in Nazism. Some people attribute it to Goebbels back in the day. And it consists of imposing a standard, in this case a linguistic one, in communities where there are two languages. For what purpose? To make the difference even more noticeable. That is, Catalan nationalists and separatists believe that for their imaginary republic to become a reality, everyone is required to speak Catalan. And if not, they fine you for putting up a sign in Spanish at your business. And if not at school, they freeze you out. And if not, they don't let the children go to certain camps. And in Galicia, the Galician Nationalist Bloc tries to do the same. Sometimes with a permissiveness from the Popular Party itself that is quite surprising. Because we have to remember that here the bloc only governed in coalition for 4 years. Therefore, language policies have more to do with the policies of the Popular Party itself than with those of the bloc. But in any case, people need to know that this normalization process is nothing more than an imposition, an obligation. I remember that when I was in college, I did a project on the socialization of drug addicts. And it turned out, after doing many surveys and working with them, that when a kid or a group didn't take drugs, didn't smoke joints or inject themselves, they were isolated, they were marginalized. Because the group saw them as a Jiminy Cricket, someone who pricked their conscience. The same thing happens here. Little by little, they keep closing in. And if you don't go along with it and submit to the dictatorship of a minority, because no matter what they say, it is a minority, but they shout much louder than the silent majority, we're all going to be subjected to their criteria. And that's how things are moving forward every day. What I don't see is anyone taking any steps to reinforce the Spanish identity of our country. Spain needs, as a minister once said, I think his name was José Ignacio Pérez at the time, referring to Catalan children, he said, we need to make Catalan children more Spanish. We need to instill a Spanish identity in all the children of Spain. They have to feel proud to be Spanish. Because Spain is a great country with a great tradition, with a brilliant history. No matter what that crazy Mexican woman says, I think she uses drugs, and all the idiots who follow her. Trying to condemn Hernán Cortés or Cristobal Colón today, a bunch of mediocre bumpkins who would never have discovered America or anything else in their lives. And much less would they have built the churches and universities that Hernán Cortés established in Mexico. Did he make mistakes? Well, maybe he did, but I can't judge history. I study history. And the result of the Spanish presence in Mexico is absolutely brilliant. Brilliant.
Friends, you talk in several messages about Spanish identity. The so-called grandchildren law is lowering it more and more every day. Listen to Raul Sixto and pay attention to the last message. It's from Sergio. He's in Lithuania.
Voting by mail is a breeding ground for captive votes. Imagine that I am the mayor of a town with 3,000 inhabitants and I want to be re-elected. So I take my non-permanent workers at the town hall and I tell them, don't worry, you will stay with me. Of course, for me to help you, I need you to help me. I have to remain mayor. How do I do this? Well, it's very simple. Get me 15 mail-in votes. Then I go to the man who needs a license for something that's a little unusual. I tell him I'll give it to you, but with elections coming, if the government changes, I can't guarantee anything. I need 15 mail-in votes, and like that, with 30 people, 15 mail-in votes. Do the math. In a town of 3,000 people, look at what we've achieved.
Let's see why the Supreme Court doesn't suspend the regularization that this traitorous government is carrying out. They've already requested it from the Community of Madrid to Vox and the Popular Party and other individuals. I'm starting to understand certain things that the Supreme Court is doing, and it's suspicious, really suspicious.
I'm married to a woman who is from a country in the European Union. We have 2 daughters who were born in Spain. My wife has been working for 22 years for a major subcontractor of a very large and powerful Spanish company. And not only has she been denied citizenship twice, but she has also been denied residency. Not only do they give citizenship to those who don't deserve it, while those of us who live abroad, like in the case of my daughters or myself, we can't renew or get our ID cards.
What's the reason for that? Like Sergio, I'm receiving countless messages. People who have been living in Spain for up to 30 years aren't allowed to vote, and now they see how someone who will never set foot in this country gets to vote. And the second friend, Sixto, is right. He's hoping for a court to stop this. Because lawsuits have been filed, but they're very slow. And now in August, you know, Carlos, the courts don't work. Why? Today, yes, they're asking for the vote.
Without a doubt, Albert. You might remember Giorgia Meloni in a speech, I think she gave it in Madrid, when she said Italian citizenship is not given away. Yes, we Spaniards can't say that. Spanish citizenship is being given away. What used to have value, what was supposed to mean that our place in Europe strengthened our standing as Spaniards, is now worth nothing. Today, anyone can be Spanish. Any criminal, they can become Spanish. And this needs to be said out loud. And it's curious because the people who defend these positions argue that because the right wants to lower taxes, and of course, if we lower taxes, how are we going to support the immigrants who come to Spain? But aren't you saying that immigrants boost the economy, improve the numbers, and contribute more to social security? Damn, we should lower taxes because if they're coming to bring wealth, what's the truth? They're not coming to bring wealth. Of course, there will be people from all over the world who can come to Spain, who have talent, who work, who integrate into society, and who help us improve as a society. And we welcome all of them. That's called legal and regulated immigration. Come on, are you really telling me that these poor men who come in a small boat crossing the sea, risking their lives so that mafia gangs can get rich, charging them for a trip that doesn't even guarantee their own lives at sea, are coming to get us out of trouble? All of this is applauded simply because of the chaos. Because the more people like this we keep out, the more the appearance and profile of our Spanish identity disintegrates, the better it is for them. When Spain stops being an absolute value recognized, protected, and defended by Spaniards, then they will have won. The stateless, those who don't care. Go ahead and vote tomorrow if you want the traffic lights in Sebastopol to be changed. Why the hell do you care about Sebastopol and the traffic lights in Sebastopol? Well, here they even want people to vote to impose a government. Pay attention, I've mentioned this several times. One day Muslims will count on their fingers how many there are. And when they see that in Spain there are 8 or 10 million people who follow that religion, who blindly obey the Quran, and they organize a political party, we will have problems like there have already been in other European cities, and that will happen. But in the meantime, our Basque compatriots expelled from their own land by ETA murderers, and 30 or 40 years ago, they had to leave so they wouldn't get shot in the back of the head. No law recognizes their right to vote in the Basque country. And that's why Herri Batasuna, the ETA murderers, heirs of the murderous gang, they are winning elections and have 195 mayorships. It's the party with the most mayors in the Basque country. How is it possible that in a land of intelligent, entrepreneurial people like the Basque country was, the majority can vote for the heirs of the murderers? How is that possible? Why have they purged the voter rolls? Why have they expelled 250,000 Spanish Basques who could have their lives in that Spanish land, who could do everything for their future? Are they going to advance their businesses? Have they expelled them? Are they making a tailor-made census? Will they win? They will win. And Pedro Sánchez has been the useful idiot who has helped them strengthen that position. Because let me remind you that today Otegi, a convicted terrorist kidnapper, is considered a statesman according to Pedro Sánchez. And with this change in the scale of values in which there are fewer and fewer of us left, because we start to normalize things that are truly outrageous and cause so much harm, not to the Spanish sentiment, no, to the commitment to Spain that our politicians should have and they don't.
Yes, that's the reality. And speaking of that commitment to Spain, there is a retired Civil Guard General, Garrido Roca, who has written a letter to the Dao of the Civil Guard that please he should go home, that he should leave his position. We're talking about Manuel Llamas, who, just like the Director General of the Civil Guard, are up to their necks. It's possible that they might end up in prison, but they're still holding on to their positions because Sanchez has told them to hang in there or be strong. Who knows what he's told them? In this letter, he advises him to step down, not to take part in political maneuvers that he hasn't designed or taken into account, that the civil guard to which he belongs should indeed be an example and that he is setting a bad example for the civil guards. Ultimately, he says that he owes nothing to any politician. Seeing the Dao accused in the same court case that investigates intimidation and coercion against members of the Civil Guard is outrageous. The letter is very harsh. Francisco Vendala, Lieutenant Colonel, how are you?
Fine, Albert Carlos, greetings. Well, let's look at the letter. The letter seems impeccable to me for the most part. The thing is, I see two serious flaws in it. One, when General Garrido Roca says, well, it turns out that commanders are chosen or appointed, in this case the Dao, for their technical abilities, because it's a technical position, etc., which has nothing to do with political leadership. I'm surprised that General says these things because he knows that nobody becomes a general in the Civil Guard, in the armed forces, or a commissioner in the police if they haven't passed several filters first. And you know what filter I'm talking about? I mean being compliant with the political power in charge. I don't care if it's the PSOE or the PP. In other words, they go along with everything. And they also keep them in the position. Look at how they keep them in the position now, as long as they keep showing that same compliance. You stay there because replacing you with someone else would be a real disaster right now. So I'm surprised by what it says in the letter. For a long time now, lieutenant colonels, generals, of course, commissioners, they don't get to those positions unless, I'm sorry to say it, they've practically sold themselves. Because they keep confusing obedience with submission and neutrality with inhibition. We've already seen now that this confusion between neutrality and inhibition ends up in collaboration, which is what happened to Lieutenant General Llamas. That's why the order he gave to the UCO is there. It was illegal, unconstitutional, illegitimate. And he gave it, and he knew what he was doing, no matter how much he now tries to say otherwise. And he remains there because, at least for this man, honor hasn't been his guiding principle for a long time. And then I'm also surprised that in the letter he still gives him the benefit of the doubt and says that, well, he hopes that when he appears before the judge, he can clarify all these circumstances for which he has been charged. Let's see, I think he'll be able to clarify very little because they caught him red-handed, at least in part of what is already known and documented by a written order, because he even gave it in writing because Lieutenant Colonel Lamas asked him for it in writing, and he gave it to him. So what we're seeing is that, at least for Lieutenant General Lamas, his motto is not honor, but it hasn't been for a long time, it seems. Then there's the second part. It's hard to believe that General Garrido still gives him the benefit of the doubt and says that, well, he hopes that when he appears before the judge, he can clarify the circumstances of the charges against him and so on. He's not going to be able to clarify anything because he was caught red-handed, because at least a good part of what the judge is accusing him of is already proven, and we all know it. He gave him an illegal and illegitimate order in writing, which Lieutenant Colonel Varas and Lamas requested, and there it is. He won't be able to back out of it, but the one who follows stays in the position. That's where what's happening in the police and the armed forces is being uncovered. These people get into these positions after having, I'll say, sold themselves. I don't know if it's about money. I don't think so. Yes, being in the spotlight and in front of everyone, those positions inherently come with a series of perks, and then generally they open the door to revolving door jobs after they retire, which is how those jobs are secured. That's the big problem we have in the police forces and the armed forces. In the end, a tyrant stays in power because of those two forces, because, as the name suggests, they are the ones who have the power. We're also seeing another attitude that catches my attention, and General Garrido doesn't question it. And the question is what the other active duty generals are doing. Why doesn't one of them go to Lieutenant General Llamas and say, look, comrade, you've stained the civil guard, you've stained me, who fulfills my duty every day, and either you leave or you resign, or we're all going to make you resign right here, just like that, directly. And that way, seeing that, well, there'd be a lot less washing their hands of it. The honor of the civil guard, because what Lieutenant General Lamas is staining and what the other generals are staining with their silence, which looks like complicity, is the honor of the institution, where there are many honorable people, where there are many people who risk their lives. And it turns out they are seeing terrible attitudes at the top, which have been happening for a long time. Let's see. I think Lieutenant General Lamas is a good example. It happens in the armed forces generals, chiefs. They've been putting up with whatever the whim of the politician in charge is, and they haven't been able to say at a given moment, look, this can't be done here. For example, allowing directors of the civil guard who are nobodies, who don't even know what a civil guard officer is, which you shouldn't allow. To have a director of the civil guard, you need generals here to fill that role. If you want a minister of defense, you have generals from the Army, Air Force, or Navy who can serve because they know what they're talking about. Because if not, they put some 40-year-old kid who's already putting up posters for the PP or the PSOE who are partisan. Then something important happens when you see what's happening with Lamas, that the civil guard has not been neutral but has been partisan. Ideologically, because it has started serving an ideology, in this case it's Director General, in this case the PSOE, the same thing would have happened with the PP.
Lieutenant Colonel Vendala will reflect in the coming days on other aspects, and thank you for saying what no one else says and telling what no one else tells. A big hug.
A hug for everyone, hug.
Look, about the government, latest messages, Kike, Elias in Florida, Guile, Juan Antonio, and Miguel.
Look, all I'm saying is that they're immoral. They're not immortal. So now we know what we have to do. Grab them by the neck and make them talk. And these scumbags have been making our lives impossible for 40 years.
About the statement in the Senate by Gertrudis Zapatero's secretary. The expression on her face, along with the questions she's being asked, is something all of Spain needs to see if there's going to be a quick change.
I've been told that this guy who's confined to his house, even his eyebrows are starting to furrow. Now you're falling apart, aren't you? Now that you're surrounded and you know what you're going to face, now you're collapsing. But you don't remember the harm you've done to so many people with your laws and your greed.
You really amuse me with the Office of Performing Arts.
Honestly, the only thing I can say is that this isn't like the old movie of Alibaba and the 40 Thieves anymore. This is some kind of Alibaba movie, but with 300 thieves.
If the problem with civil society is that it doesn't have representation, then the most logical thing would be to create a party to represent civil society, which would surely do a lot of damage to the other parties. Then we would really have the strength to stand up to these scoundrels.
Tomorrow, I hope to have an exclusive about Lady Diaz, which I think will interest everyone. And they tell me that Zapatero is depressed, not just Julito Martinez, who is in treatment, but Zapatero, who doesn't leave his house, doesn't see anyone, and doesn't understand what has happened. Do you see former President Zapatero fleeing Spain or not?
Well, look, I don't know, Albert. In this Spain we have today, anything is possible. Just think about it. This country, of course, listening to Vendala makes you realize that there are committed good Spaniards who are suffering terribly because they don't understand anything that's going on. Albert, we live in a country where if you wear a Spanish flag on your wrist or as a pin, you could get slapped in the street because people attack those who wear Spanish flags. But we're in a country where it's allowed to burn a Spanish flag or burn photographs of heads of state, where we have the Director General of the Civil Guard under investigation and nothing happens, the DAO under investigation and nothing happens. The Minister of Transport, the most powerful economically, is in jail, and the Secretary of Organization of the Socialist Party has already been in jail and is waiting to be tried. The president's wife, the brother Zapatero, are they all involved in the same thing? The unexplained fortune of Jose Bono, another distinguished socialist who used to boast, I imagine he would also agree with Zapatero that being a socialist means having very little and being willing to give a lot. In this country, we're creating this mess of crap, pardon my language, because that's what we're making. In this country, you can't live in peace. And now social peace is something that we Spaniards have worked hard for over many years, only for a gang of criminals to come and break it, destroy it, and set us against each other. They are turning us against each other. The polarization they're complaining about is being caused by the government itself and by Pedro Sánchez himself. And what about the thug, that orangutan from Valladolid, and Oscar Lopez, and all these people who are dedicated to spreading hate, because these guys made up the whole hate crime idea just so they can hate. And they hate constantly, but they hate at the cost of breaking up families, breaking up friendships, breaking up the country, breaking up institutions, taking over all the institutions, colonizing, depriving us of freedom, forcing us to watch public TV channels that are political propaganda 24 hours a day, which also make millionaires out of those who used to appear on TV with the eyebrow guy, who was very likable. We all have to recover this Spain together. That's why we can't let anxiety get the best of us. We will wait until they give us a ballot box because we are not like the socialists. Up to 5 heads of state and government in Spain were killed by the Republicans and by members of the Socialist Party. There is not a single one who was killed by the right, not one. Well, there are tributes to La Pasionaria. Yes, the one who told Calvo Sotelo, "You have spoken for the last time today," and he was killed by some socialists. They left him lying in a ditch. This is the Spain of confrontation. Who talks about Francoism in Spain? The far left, the left, and Pedro Sánchez try to feed off that pain. You have to be a fool, a bad person, to dive into that pain that divided Spaniards, and we never want it to happen again. Well, they are creating a breeding ground to pit Spaniards against each other. Let's not allow it.
That's excellent advice to wrap up today's talk. I'm moving on to other stories, and Carlos, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you, Carlos Marcos. Big hug, my friend. We'll go to the newsroom in a minute.
You are
listening
Castillon Confidential.
When my mother died, I inherited her debts and I was left alone. Then COVID came. I went months without receiving a single euro. I ended up needing psychological help.
If you are in a situation of insolvency, contact us and we will tell you if you meet the requirements of the Second Chance Law. Sin Deuda Group, your second chance.
The price of gold is reaching historic records. Those pieces of jewelry you no longer wear could solve many of your financial problems, but how do you know whom to trust and where to go? Javier Peno is discreet and has been buying jewelry, diamonds, gold, and top watch brands like Cartier from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s for 36 years, and he always offers the highest appraisal. He has 6 stores in Cadiz, and the main one is in Madrid at 7 Arenal Street. Don't get confused. Number 7 brings good luck. At that price, you get a place right next to Puerta del Sol. They don't close at midday. No one is going to pay you more. If you want to talk to Javier, call him on our behalf at 91 500 93 0491. 593 0491. Completely trustworthy.
We're going to the newsroom of the show. Susana Guest, tell us.
We're still here, Albert, in the newsroom of Castillon Confidential, as always, receiving messages and opinions and also stories from our insiders. That's the case with Jose Manuel Fernandez. He says, I hope you can read my story. The madness behind the so-called grandchildren law is an outrage. I'm from Barcelona. My wife is Dominican, and I've lived in Spain for 34 years. It makes no sense. And by the way, she has contributed more than any minister, female minister, or non-binary minister. Our daughter was born in Spain and went to live and work in the United Kingdom 12 years ago, where our grandson was born. Does it make sense for him to vote in Dominican elections when he comes of age just because his grandmother is from there, a country he's never visited and probably won't unless he vacations in Punta Cana? Karen also tells us another story from London. Greetings from London, from this Spanish woman born in Bilbao who was called a fascist because she was not in favor of dam independence. If the Basque country falls under the control of the criminal Otegi, both the Basque country and the rest of Spain should be prepared. The Basque country is Spain until someone proves otherwise. I'm a fan of Carlos Marcos Rancaño and all his collaborators. I hope you can read and share this comment. Some mornings it's true that I wake up in a bad mood because so many things are happening in Spain right now, a country that has been among the top 8 powers in the world. This scoundrel Pedrito Sánchez has completely ruined it. We also have a message in this case. Rosa says, if it had been an ordinary person, they wouldn't have given anything back, absolutely nothing. So we're not equal before the law. We're not equal. She's obviously referring to Begoña Gómez's passport. The PP says that Spain is going down the drain. The Spanish people have no spirit. The government is linked to an alleged criminal gang, and the opposition is cowardly and globalist. No one here does anything. Dolores says, how can there be so many journalists who don't stand up for the truth and push back against the accumulated lies of this unworthy government? Where are we headed? On the other hand, Tomas says, someone explained to me why we have to be lenient with Begoña so she can attend her daughter's graduation, and yet Vito Quiles can't even go outside. Susie says that we must defend freedom of speech and opinion democracy, and she believes it is in danger. Also, on the other hand, Electricidad says that the courts are slow when they want to be, truly when they want to be. Because when it came to giving the papers, or in this case, the passport to Begoña, it wasn't slow at all, quite the opposite. And in the end, Seve explains to us, he says that we need honest politicians, and we'll leave it here to see if it's important. For those people who are joining our channel every day, please know that all the interviews are posted on our channels. And there's also a wonderful and very successful digital newspaper, which is accionconfidential.com. It's free, and you can also subscribe and stay well informed. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you, Susana. Marta has written us a message, and she's absolutely right. She says, I can't vote in a municipality where I have a house because I'm not registered there. But Cubans, yes, they could vote in Spain even if they're not registered. Can someone explain this to me? You're absolutely right. And Antonio is doing the right thing. He doesn't watch TV. Listen.
People are already done with the system. They're done with pay TV bought by the government, and all this manipulation stuff. For example, yesterday I wanted to watch Spain's game, which I don't usually do. I said I'm going to watch Spain's last game, and it turns out I didn't have the TV channels tuned in, just so you get an idea of what I watch on TV. It's just that I'm not interested in watching TV.
Thank you very much. Well, to watch Spain's match, you have to tune in to Channel 1 on Spanish television. I understand if you don't have it tuned in. That's actually very healthy. Good for you. Well, Maria Teresa is in Montevideo. They're complaining about a heat wave in Europe, in Spain. Listen to her.
Good morning, Mr. Albert. From Montevideo, Uruguay. With extreme cold, we've had what's called graupel, which isn't really snow. It's called graupel. At first glance, it looks like snow, but it isn't. But it's just as dangerous as snow. And we've had sleet as well. We're really having a hard time, Mr. Albert.
A big hug. You know, a little bit of that cool weather in Spain and all of Europe wouldn't be bad for us at all. We're dealing with a second and third heat wave suffocating. Anyway, moving on. This meme of Freud Lannister. Very funny. Sánchez is in a press conference and this happens.
It's the henchman of the press. First of all, I apologize for the fact that, since I'm presenting a national fertilizer plan, you might notice an unbearable stench because this field has been fertilized.
But, President, they haven't fertilized it.
Then it's this smell of sewers and saunas that I carry with me and never goes away. Damn it.
That's right, it is. It's true. He went to a vacant lot to inaugurate a fertilizer factory that hadn't even been built yet. He can only go to very far away places where there aren't any people, so they don't call him son of a I like fruit. You know what that's about. Well, there's one more, the one from Begoña calling Sánchez. Enrique sent it to me.
Pedro, have Vito Quiles arrested. He embarrassed me in front of all the Spaniards.
But, darling, the judge already said he was innocent.
I don't care. I want him arrested.
Listen, Marlaska, issue an order to find and arrest Vito Quiles. I want him arrested tonight. Hello, boss. But what are we accusing him of? There's no warrant out for him. Don't worry about that. First arrest him, and then we'll come up with something. All right? I'll give the order to my men. But keep in mind that this could blow up in your face. It's up to you.
The
Mafia, the Tremendo?
But that's how they are. That's how they are. Angelines, can you send me one more? Freud Lannister, pay attention to this because it's a work of art. They come out with the bag of money from the Bank of Spain. The police approach. Good afternoon. What happened here?
What? Nothing happened as far as I know.
Beloved leader, what is your response to rumors that the UCO is investigating one of your ministers for bank robbery?
Wow, what a made-up story.
From Sauna News, we have obtained access to the bank's security camera footage that the UCO has where the minister can clearly be seen taking the money. Judge for yourselves.
I want to express my complete lack of understanding regarding the judge's order seeking to have me formally investigated, and I announce that I will cooperate with the justice system to prove that I am completely innocent of the accusation.
Judge Lopez with the bag of money in his hand.
From the videos of the minister robbing the bank, some say someone resembling you watched the robbery and that you were there.
Sweaty Sánchez with a 500 bill when the minister...
Let justice do its work. For now, I can only express my full support and ask that his presumption of innocence be respected. I am completely convinced of his integrity.
What do you think? Is it something to joke about or not? One day we'll catch them like that because, come on, jewelry, safes, loads of money, fronts, that's what's missing. The scene is missing, right? The moment you catch him red-handed. Well, many thanks for Maria Gaona's donations. May they never silence you. A kiss, Maria. From Jordi Valor, a monthly regular. From Maria Garcia, from Vicente. You're what keeps me going. From Yolanda Garcia, from Maria Alicia Herrero, thank you very much. And from Manuel Martin Sanchez. Thank you very much to all of you, because without you, this machine doesn't work. Well, and to finish, there's a woman, I'm told she's a good comedian, who has done a skit about self-employed people, and Nuria sent it to me. That's how I feel. Watch.
Hey, wait a moment. Let's see. I'm not poor. I'm self-employed.
On the street, sir, I'm very sorry.
It's okay.
Here you go, and I'm very sorry. The donor apologizes and returns it.
With I'm self-employed. I'm self-employed. Don't eat it here so you can get by. Self-employed. Thank you. Self-employed.
And now she's picking up because, of course, self-employed. Before, they used to say, I don't have a job, I have 3 kids. Now, to get a donation, you have to say, I'm self-employed. It's the plain truth, friends. That's how things are. Tomorrow will be better for sure, or maybe not, I don't know. I hope you'll be there. Thank you for keeping the trench well guarded. See you all tomorrow.
You know it and I know it. We're in the know, you're in the know, I'm in the know. Everyone's in the know. Everyone's in the know. But shh, only for open minds and for people who are wide awake. From the trench, the bullets whistle and there's no way to get out there. Here, freedom has wings of wax. Albert Castillon, Susanna Gass. You girls, nor me, nor anyone else, thank you very much. Thank you.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon.